Good day, spiritual artists. This is CJ Miller, your host of the Spiritual Artist Podcast, and we are halfway through our Doodle Book Club, examining the spiritual artist we are designed to create by, guess who? Me, Christopher J. Miller. This book is available on Amazon, so if you don't have it, it's a great thing to have where you can highlight these passages to remember them as you work. Reflecting on yesterday's message about listening, I realized how important that is because I'm working on a very large painting right now, and I wasn't sure where it was going. And so I threw a bunch of color down and I started to listen. So let's talk about the next stage of when we're working on a painting. And we are going to start with chapter 13, Act, Listen, and React. Quote, the first demand any work of art makes upon us is to surrender. Look, listen, receive, get yourself out of the way. C.S. Lewis. Chapter 13 is entitled Act, Listen, and React. In the beginning, I struggled before the canvas. I would find myself fighting negative thoughts, getting frustrated, and destroying what I just created with a simple broad stroke, or at best, merely putting down my brush and walking away from the easel. But my experience slowly improved. Soon time began passing without notice, and my initial negative response occurred less and less. Time passed quickly as I stood before the canvas. Many artists describe this experience as a time warp, as a place beyond the physical constraints of time itself. By quieting my thoughts and directing my feelings, I could control access to flow and stay in the conscious state of a spiritual artist. I would speak first by taking action with a dab of ochre paint. Then I would lean back and listen. Then respond by smearing ochre paint somewhere else on the canvas. Then step back and listen again. This process builds in momentum, happening faster and faster. In time, it grew into a flow. I became aware that my painting resembled a conversation. In the most critical step in the conversation, the space between acting and reacting, I would hear guidance. A soft yet firm voice was telling me what action to take next. Some call this voice intuition. Some call this voice inspiration. What was that voice to me? It seemed to occur beyond my mind or below my conscious thought. I come to believe that this voice is from creative intelligence, or whatever word you choose to use for this greater power. I believe that it's a type of conversation or dance with spirit, the point where co-creation occurs. I decided not to analyze the process too much, but rather to enjoy the back and forth dialogue, make a move, listen, react, repeat. Each canvas wants to tell a story that unfolds when I let the conversation flow. My husband, confidant, and sounding board, Terry Martin, is an accomplished actor and director who has spent his life honing the craft of acting as well as teaching others. The core of his technique evolved after taking classes from Sanford Meisner, who is the originator of the Meisner technique. Terry uses many Meisner exercises while teaching acting. One practice, known as repetitions, lays the foundation for scene work. It involves two students sitting directly across from each other. The first student starts by speaking a phrase, such as, "Your shirt is black." The second student repeats the exact sentence back to the first. The words volley back and forth, each time gaining nuance through emphasis and emotion. Each time, the sentence structure itself shifts and changes. The exercise is designed to remove the opportunity for thinking before responding, to teach the student to access a level beyond thought. While most actors can pick up cues from the written word in a script or play, this exercise teaches them how to be authentically emotional without judgment. I'm going to repeat that. While most actors can pick up cues from the written word in a script or play, this exercise teaches them how to be authentic emotionally without judgment. By exploring the technique for repetitions, I began to understand what happens when a spiritual artist stands before the canvas. According to Meisner in his book on acting, quote, "My approach is based on bringing the actor back to his emotional impulses and to acting that is firmly rooted in the instinctive. It is based on the fact that all good acting comes from the heart, as it were, and that there's no mentality in it." End quote. I believe that it's by reaching a state beyond thought, one of impulse and reaction, that we can co-create with this creative intelligence. For more information on the theory behind the Meisner technique, I recommend reading Sanford Meisner's book on acting. His process can be applied to any creative act. For me, this same process occurs when I'm painting. My goal is to arrive at a state of flow where I'm applying paint, listening, and reacting to what I see. While Meisner's process involves the vibrational dynamic between two different people with two different belief systems, my approach consists of a dance with the paint and the canvas. I'm reacting to the painting surface, the paint's viscosity, and the size and shape of my brush. I'm also wrestling with composition, color dynamics, light, value, and saturation. As my experience and toolbox expand, more and more levels are added to the process of painting. With practice and conscious presence, I've learned the subtleties of different paints. For example, I find Holbein to have better pigmentation and gold and heavy body to be relatively thick and heavy. In fact, I think it's too heavy for me. I instinctively know when to reach for which brand, but where does listening come into the process? And who am I listening to? Most artists will claim the same sort of wonderment. After sharing their recent work of art, they exclaim, quote, "I don't know where the inspiration comes from. It seems to flow through me from some other source." I've taken several classes from spiritual director, Reverend Dr. Petra Weldez of a Center for Spiritual Living in Dallas. She's an incredible new thought teacher and transcribes the teachings of Ernest Holmes. She taught countless courses on spirituality, including those with titles like Creative Process in the Individual, The Philosophy of the Science of Mind, and It's All God. I learned to appreciate her knowledge of many diverse spiritual teachers, both past and present. During one class, after explaining my creative process of acting, listening, and reacting, I asked her for clarification. Quote, "When I'm painting, I believe that I'm being directed by a greater power than me. Something is guiding my process through inspired thought and action," I said. "But I'm confused about the process. When I'm painting, which is God? Is it when I apply the stroke? Or is the automatic voice I hear telling me how to respond to the stroke? Which is it?" Without skipping a beat, Reverend Petra responded, "It's both." Reverend Petra asks us to consider the God within both ourselves and the world outside of ourselves. Her comments counter the false belief of duality. We are not separate from each other or creative intelligence, and we can interact with spirit through creativity. Earlier in this book, I established that one intelligent power is behind all things manifested throughout the universe. While we choose to know this power by a different name, we can agree that it must flow through all things, both physical and spiritual. In this case, creative intelligence resides in the painter, the paint, and the technical intelligence directing the entire process. It's through the process of creation that we interact with this omnipresent power. As physical manifestations made in the likeness of spirit, we contain creative intelligence within ourselves. When we practice action, followed by mindful listening before reacting, we are spirit interacting with spirit. As Meisner discovered with repetition exercises and a class of actors, I understood through my painting practice. Through connection with myself, my canvas, and spirit, I learned that I would discover intuitive guidance while working. I find that by using this process, I continue to uncover new tools and techniques. I continue to reveal new work that is wholly unique and individual to me. As spiritual artists, it's through our connection and co-creation with a greater power that we expand the boundaries of our creative expression. Wow. I really love this chapter because it's kind of a synopsis of the whole book, really. It's talking about the fact that spirit is within us and outside of ourselves. It's on the canvas, it's in the brush, it's in the paint, it's in our reaction to it. It's everywhere. And we are having a conversation with this when we're painting. And so yesterday I started a huge canvas for my upcoming show. And I started in the way that I'm comfortable by applying a lot of color. But I'll be honest with you, listeners, I didn't know where to go. I wasn't sure what was the next step. I was listening, but I wasn't hearing something. And this happens sometimes. Sometimes we have to wait a little bit when we ask for guidance. I want to repeat that. Sometimes we have to wait a little bit when we ask for guidance. So I decided to walk away from the canvas. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. I had decided the whole day was ready for me to paint. I wanted it. I left it open. I had time to do it. I wasn't occupied with other commitments. But you know what? I decided to just walk away from it. I went and I watched a TV show. I just relaxed. And sometimes we have to relax a little bit. We have to let go. We have to let go. And sure enough, after watching a show, some fluffy show on TV, it wasn't even that, awe-inspiring. It was just a fluffy show. I put on some music and I started feeling something. I started hearing something. I started hearing a melody. I started hearing emotion. And I went back to that canvas. And I still was a little, I still didn't hear clearly enough. And so I just did one little stroke, one little stroke. I saw a shape. I saw something that was working. And you know what I did? I highlighted it. I kind of put some strokes around it. I kind of gave it some space to breathe. I decided this little space, this teeny little 4-inch space on the canvas was working. So I was going to accent it. And then I stood back and I listened. That's what I did. And you know what? I kept moving slowly, little step at a time, isolating this, isolating that, pulling this out, adding this color. And before you knew it, I had found a composition. I had found a composition in this painting. So we are having a co-creative dance with God all the time when we create, and we need to learn to listen. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes we have to relax into it. Sometimes we can push it, but really it's about being in that wonderful state of flow, what I call the green state, right there in the middle, right in the state of play. And sometimes we have to know when we hear it to react to it. So I hope you go into the studio today and use this day to be creative and learn the importance of making a movement. You always have to start with an act, listen, and then react. We are, as I said, halfway through the book. I'm so glad you're joining me on this journey. There are some of you that have been firmly committed, and I'm so thrilled for that. I do need to see you know that you like this on YouTube. Please like it, follow the channel. I need to feel that people are seeing it on YouTube. I'll be honest with you, part of this process for me is deciding whether or not I should continue with YouTube or just stick with the podcast players. So let me know if you love hearing this message on YouTube, please in the comments section, let me know. I will see you tomorrow. Be creative and be a spiritual artist. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Whether you're watching this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or iHeartRadio, make sure you choose the subscribe button so that you will receive updates when new segments are released. Most importantly, be still, listen, and know that you are a spiritual artist.